What happens when a guarded billionaire, driven by ambition but haunted by a shadowed legacy, collides with an outspoken barista whose authenticity is her only armor? For Ethan Voss, success has always meant control, until one impulsive decision brings Mia Torres, a woman with no ties to his world, into his orbit. What begins as a calculated move to salvage his empire spirals into a high-stakes battle for trust and redemption, as their unlikely partnership becomes a target for betrayal, scandal, and ambition. As buried secrets are unearthed and ruthless enemies close in, Ethan and Mia must navigate a maze of power plays and shifting loyalties, discovering that the risks they face in the boardroom pale in comparison to the fragile bonds forming between them. Can two people from such different worlds find common ground, or will their fight to expose the truth tear them, and everything they've built, apart? Their journey will challenge everything they thought they knew about trust, integrity, and the courage to take the ultimate leap of faith. Ethan Voss stared out of the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, watching as the golden hues of sunset melted into the city skyline. The pristine view, a symbol of his success, offered no comfort today. His mind churned with thoughts of the Gala, an event that could make or break the next chapter of Voss Enterprises. The call had come an hour earlier. Megan, his PR manager, had canceled. Family emergency, she'd said in a rushed tone, leaving Ethan to scramble. Megan was supposed to be his perfectly polished partner for the evening, someone who could help him charm investors and project the confidence they desperately needed to see. Without her, his carefully constructed plan was crumbling. His assistant Chloe lingered by the door, her clipboard hugged to her chest. "Sir, I can try reaching out to—" No, Ethan's voice cut through the room, sharp and impatient. He didn't need another rehearsed PR specialist or a last-minute substitution who would come off as insincere. Investors wanted authenticity, something he rarely dealt in. As he sat at his desk, his eyes drifted to the paper cup beside him, the name Mia scrawled in quick, messy handwriting. "Chloe," he said suddenly, standing up, "call my driver. I'll be back in 30 minutes. Mia Torres hummed along to the soft jazz playing in the background of the cafe as she prepared another latte. The evening crowd had thinned, leaving her with a rare moment of quiet. Her hands moved instinctively, the motions of frothing milk and pulling espresso shots etched into her muscle memory. She barely noticed the door chime until Ethan Voss's imposing figure blocked the counter. "Mr. Voss," she said, blinking. He was a regular customer, though not one she'd exchanged more than pleasantries with. His expensive suits and curt demeanor always seemed out of place in the cozy shop. "I need to ask you something," Ethan said without preamble. "Sure," Mia replied, her tone wary as she placed the latte on the counter. "I want you to accompany me to a gala tonight." Mia froze, her hand still resting on the espresso machine. "You what?" "It's a formal event. My original partner canceled, and I think you'll fit the role." She laughed nervously. "Fit the role? Mr. Voss, I'm a barista, not whatever it is you're looking for." "That's exactly the point," Ethan said, his tone brisk. "You're relatable, authentic. People respond to that." Mia frowned. "You don't even know me." "I know enough. You'll be compensated generously, and it's only for tonight." He glanced at his watch, clearly impatient. She hesitated. The offer was bizarre, and her instincts told her to say no. But curiosity, and the prospect of extra money, nagged at her. "Fine," she said finally, wiping her hands on her apron. "But if this is some elaborate prank, I'm walking out." Ethan nodded curtly. "There's a car waiting outside. Be ready in 30 minutes." Mia stood in her modest apartment, staring at the dress her friend had lent her. The sleek black fabric clung to her in a way that felt foreign, but the mirror didn't lie. It suited her. When Ethan's car arrived, she slipped inside, feeling as though she were stepping into another world. Ethan glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "You clean up well," he said, though his tone lacked warmth. "Thanks, I think," Mia replied. The drive was quiet, tension thick in the air. Ethan barely spoke, his focus seemingly elsewhere. Mia, meanwhile, couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into something far bigger than she'd anticipated. The Zenith Hotel stood like a beacon in the city's heart, its grand ballroom a hub of wealth and influence. Ethan strode through the entrance, his presence commanding attention. Mia followed close behind, feeling the weight of 100 curious gazes. "Remember," Ethan said under his breath, "smile, speak only when spoken to, and follow my lead." Mia bit back a retort, nodding instead. Inside, the room glittered with opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over polished marble floors and elegantly dressed guests. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne, their movements practiced and precise. Ethan greeted the first group of investors with ease, introducing Mia as a close acquaintance. She smiled politely, her discomfort well hidden. It wasn't long before Victor Lancaster joined their circle. With his perfectly tailored suit and wolfish grin, he was the embodiment of charm masking cruelty. "Ethan," Victor said, his voice smooth. "And who might this be?" "This is Mia Torres," Ethan replied, his tone clipped. Victor's sharp eyes scanned her. "A pleasure, Mia. Tell me, what do you think of gatherings like these?" Mia felt her pulse quicken, but she met his gaze evenly. "They're overwhelming, but I think people appreciate sincerity more than spectacle. Don't you?" Victor's smirk faltered. Ethan's eyes flicked toward her, a hint of surprise breaking through his mask. As the evening progressed, Mia found herself fielding more questions from curious guests. Her unpolished honesty was a refreshing contrast to the practiced speeches of the elite, and Ethan couldn't deny the positive attention she garnered. Still, tension simmered between them. "You're drawing too much attention," Ethan muttered as they stood near the bar. "I'm just being myself," Mia shot back. "That's the problem." Mia rolled her eyes, turning to leave. "Then maybe you should have picked someone who follows orders." By the time the gala ended, Ethan was seething. In the car ride home, he kept his gaze fixed ahead, his jaw tight. "You ignored my instructions," he said finally. "I wasn't trying to ruin anything," Mia replied, her tone defensive. "If anything, I helped. People liked me. That's not the point." Mia crossed her arms. "Then what is?" Ethan didn't answer. His silence was louder than any argument, and the tension between them remained palpable as they pulled up to her apartment. "Thank you for the opportunity," Mia said, her voice tinged with sarcasm as she stepped out. Ethan watched her go, a mixture of frustration and intrigue simmering beneath his calm exterior. Ethan Voss didn't like losing control. His world was one of sharp lines and clear hierarchies, where people stayed in their lanes, and success came from strict adherence to the rules of power. But as he sat in his office the morning after the gala, replaying the evening's events, he couldn't deny the spark Mia Torres had brought to the room. He scrolled through social media posts and news articles. Images of Mia, laughing candidly, speaking with guests, even challenging Victor Lancaster, dominated the coverage. The captions ranged from curious to cutting. Who is Ethan Voss's mystery companion? Unpolished or unpretentious? The night's most talked about guest. Ethan closed the laptop, tension coiling in his chest. This wasn't the kind of attention he wanted. Across town, Mia was dealing with her own fallout. "You were on the news," her roommate, Sophie, exclaimed, shoving a phone in her face. Mia groaned, sliding onto the couch with her coffee. "Great. Just what I needed. It's not bad. People are talking about how refreshing you were. Look, this article says you stole the spotlight with your authenticity." Mia buried her face in her hands. "I didn't mean to steal anything. I was just trying to survive the night." "Maybe," Sophie teased, "but it worked." Mia's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her stomach sinking when she saw Ethan's name. "Come to my office," Ethan said the moment Mia picked up. She sighed. "Why?" "Just get here." Half an hour later, she stood in Ethan's sleek office, her nerves already fraying under his scrutiny. "You made quite an impression," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" Mia asked. "That depends. Investors liked you, but the attention you drew has put us under a microscope." Mia frowned. I didn't ask for any of this, you know? Neither did I. Ethan shot back. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Look, this situation isn't ideal, but it's salvageable. I need you to attend another event with me. Mia blinked. Another one? Are you serious? Deadly serious. This time, we'll do it my way. The second event was a charity luncheon, far less glamorous, but no less important. Ethan briefed Mia during the drive, his tone sharp as he laid out precise instructions. Keep it simple, he said. No off-the-cuff remarks, no. Being myself. Mia interjected, raising an eyebrow. Ethan's jaw tightened. Exactly. When they arrived, Mia immediately noticed the shift in atmosphere. Unlike the glittering gala, this crowd was more subdued, though no less judgmental. Victor Lancaster was there again, his presence looming like a shadow. Well, if it isn't the talk of the town, Victor said, approaching with his ever-present smirk. Mia, isn't it? How are you enjoying your new role as Ethan's, what shall we call it, publicity experiment? Mia forced a smile. I prefer unexpected success, but call it what you like. Victor chuckled. I'll keep that in mind. His gaze shifted to Ethan. Bold move, Voss. Let's see how it plays out. Ethan clenched his fists, resisting the urge to lash out. As the luncheon continued, Mia adhered to Ethan's instructions, keeping her comments minimal and her demeanor reserved. But her restraint felt stifling, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being paraded around as a prop. During a break, she cornered Ethan near the buffet table. This isn't working, she said quietly. What are you talking about? This. Me? Pretending to be someone I'm not. It's fake, and people can sense it. Ethan frowned. What people respond to is discipline, control. Mia shook her head. What they respond to is realness. That's why they like me at the gala, and that's why this, she gestured around the room, is falling flat. Before Ethan could respond, an older woman approached, her expression kind but curious. You're Ethan's guest, aren't you? She asked Mia. Yes, Mia replied, smiling. I just wanted to say, I saw you at the gala last night. You were a breath of fresh air. We need more people like you in these circles. Mia blinked, caught off guard. Thank you. That means a lot. The woman nodded, then turned to Ethan. You're lucky to have her. Ethan remained silent as the woman walked away, his thoughts clouded. The car ride back to the city was tense. I told you this wouldn't work, Mia said finally. You have no idea what's at stake here, Ethan snapped. Maybe not, Mia admitted, but I know people. And I know they're tired of the same polished nonsense. If you want them to believe in you, you have to give them something real. Ethan said nothing, his jaw tightening as he stared out the window. When they arrived at Mia's apartment, she hesitated before getting out. For what it's worth, she said softly, I think you're capable of a lot more than you let on. You just have to trust yourself. Ethan didn't respond, but her words lingered long after she was gone. Ethan Voss sat in his office, tension radiating off him as he sifted through media reports and financial projections. His name and company were no strangers to public scrutiny, but the sudden spotlight on Mia Torres, a barista with no prior connection to his world, was an unpredictable variable. The morning's headlines didn't help. Ethan Voss's unlikely partner, PR stunt or genuine connection. Mia Torres, a Cinderella story or a misstep for Voss Enterprises. Ethan slammed his laptop shut, exhaling sharply. He hated chaos, and this was spiraling into something uncontrollable. Across town, Mia was trying to go about her day as though her life hadn't been upended. The cafe was busier than usual, with curious customers sneaking glances and whispering behind her back. You're famous now, her co-worker Lisa teased, grinning as she handed Mia a fresh order ticket. Not the kind of famous I wanted, Mia muttered, pulling a double shot of espresso. Her phone buzzed on the counter. It was Ethan. Again. When Mia arrived at Ethan's office later that day, she was already on edge. His assistant ushered her in with a sympathetic smile. I hope you have a good explanation for dragging me back here, Mia said, crossing her arms as she stood in front of Ethan's desk. He looked up from his papers, his expression as controlled as ever. "We have a problem." "You mean you have a problem?" Mia shot back. "I didn't ask for any of this attention." Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know, but whether we like it or not, you're in this now. And the way we handle it will determine the future of my company." Mia's eyebrows shot up. "Your company? What about my life? People are digging into my past, making assumptions, and—" "Enough," Ethan said sharply, his tone cutting through her frustration. "You think you're the only one facing scrutiny? Investors are questioning my judgment because of you. If you want this to end well for either of us, you'll follow my lead." Mia's jaw tightened. "Your lead got us into this mess. Maybe it's time to try something different." Their standoff ended when Chloe knocked softly and entered, holding out a tablet. "Mr. Lancaster is holding a press conference," she said, her voice hesitant. Ethan's face darkened as he took the tablet. On the screen, Victor Lancaster stood at a podium, flanked by reporters. "I'm not here to criticize Ethan Voss," Victor said, his voice smooth and practiced. "But I do think it's fair to question the wisdom of his recent decisions. Business should be about stability, about trust. And I worry that this new direction might be leading Voss Enterprises astray." The reporters murmured as Victor delivered his calculated blow. Ethan's grip tightened on the tablet. "He's turning this into an attack on my leadership and using me as the weapon," Mia said quietly. Mia sat across from Ethan in the sleek conference room, a cup of untouched coffee in her hands. The room's sterile elegance only amplified the tension between them. "What do we do now?" Mia asked. Ethan stared at the city skyline for a moment before answering. "We dig deeper into Victor's motives. This isn't just about public perception. He's playing a longer game." Mia frowned. "And where do I fit into this?" "You're the face of the controversy," Ethan said bluntly. "We use that to our advantage. If Victor's orchestrating something, we'll find it." The next few days were a whirlwind of research, strategy sessions, and tense exchanges. Mia found herself thrust into a world of corporate politics that felt as foreign as it was overwhelming. Ethan, for all his cold precision, was relentless. He uncovered emails, financial records, and whispered rumors, piecing together a trail that led back to Victor. Mia, meanwhile, struggled to find her place in the chaos. Her instincts told her that authenticity was the key to winning public trust, but Ethan's rigid approach left little room for vulnerability. "I can't keep doing this," she said one evening, slumping into a chair in Ethan's office. "This isn't me." Ethan looked up from his laptop, his expression softer than usual. "I know it's not easy, but if we don't fight back, Victor will win. And what happens after that?" Mia asked. "I go back to my cafe, and you go back to whatever this is." She gestured around the sleek office. Ethan hesitated, the question lingering between them. The breakthrough came when Mia stumbled upon a detail that Ethan had overlooked: a series of charity donations made by Victor's company. On the surface, they appeared generous, but Mia's sharp eye caught a pattern. "These aren't donations," she said, pointing to the spreadsheet. "They're payoffs. Look, every one of these coincides with a major deal he closed." Ethan leaned over her shoulder, his brow furrowing. "You're right. This could be enough to expose him, but it won't mean anything if people don't believe us," Mia said. Ethan met her gaze. "Then we make them believe." Mia Torres had never been more conflicted. Sitting in Ethan Voss's office, staring at the piles of evidence they'd gathered against Victor Lancaster, she felt the weight of a world she didn't understand pressing down on her. "This is enough to start," Ethan said, his voice calm but determined. "To start what?" Mia asked, crossing her arms. "A public war. You realize how dangerous this is, right?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You wanted authenticity. This is it. Exposing Victor isn't just about saving my company. It's about doing what's right." Mia frowned. "And you think people will see it that way? That they'll take our side?" "They will," Ethan said, "because they'll believe you." The next morning, Mia walked into the cafe she once considered her haven, only to feel the familiar sting of whispers and stares. Her coworkers, supportive though they tried to be, couldn't hide their curiosity about the headlines. "Hey, Mia," Lisa called from behind the counter. "You're trending again." "Great," Mia muttered, setting her bag down. "Seriously, though," Lisa continued, lowering her voice, "are you sure this is a good idea? Getting involved with a guy like Voss?" Mia sighed. "I don't know anymore. He's not what I expected, but I can't tell if that's good or bad." Before Lisa could respond, the cafe door swung open, and Ethan himself strode in, drawing every pair of eyes in the room. Mia froze. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," Ethan said, ignoring the stares. Mia hesitated, then nodded toward the back room. "You can't just show up here," Mia said once they were alone. "I'm not here for small talk," Ethan replied. He placed a folder on the table. "This is what we have on Victor. If we're going to use it, we need a plan." Mia flipped through the pages, her frown deepening. "This is damning, but it's also risky. If this backfires..." "It won't," Ethan interrupted. "Not if we play it right. The key is making the first move before Victor has a chance to spin it." Mia looked up at him, her frustration evident. "You make it sound so simple, but this isn't just about you anymore. It's my life, too." Ethan hesitated, the weight of her words sinking in. "I know, and I won't let him ruin that." For the first time, Mia saw a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes, and it unsettled her more than she cared to admit. The first step in her plan was subtle. Ethan reached out to allies within his network, carefully leaking hints of Victor's schemes to trusted contacts. Mia, meanwhile, prepared herself for the inevitable backlash. She spent hours in Ethan's office, poring over documents and rehearsing what she would say when the time came. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted one evening, her voice tinged with doubt. Ethan glanced up from his laptop. "You can. You've already faced worse." Mia shot him a skeptical look. "Easy for you to say. You've been doing this your whole life. And you've been surprising me at every turn," Ethan replied, his tone softer than usual. "You're stronger than you think." Mia blinked, caught off guard by the compliment. For a moment, the tension between them eased, replaced by a quiet understanding. The following week, Ethan and Mia attended a high-profile fundraiser, their first public appearance since the Gala. The event was held in a sprawling mansion, its lavish decor a testament to old money. "This is your chance," Ethan whispered as they entered. "Be yourself. But don't forget what's at stake." Mia rolled her eyes. "Thanks for the pep talk." As they mingled, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that every conversation was a test. She spoke cautiously, mindful of Ethan's earlier warnings, but her natural candor slipped through in moments. It was during one such moment that Victor Lancaster approached. "Well, if it isn't my favorite duo," he said, his smirk as sharp as ever. "Enjoying the evening?" "Immensely," Ethan replied, his tone cold. Victor turned to Mia, his gaze calculating. "And you?" "Still adjusting to life in the spotlight." Mia met his gaze evenly. "I wouldn't say I've adjusted, but I'm learning." "Good," Victor said. "You'll need to, considering the company you're keeping." Before Ethan could respond, Victor leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Careful who you trust, Mia. Not everyone plays fair in this world." Mia's expression didn't falter, but his words left a chill in their wake. By the end of the night, Mia and Ethan reconvened in the car, the weight of the evening hanging heavy between them. "He's trying to rattle you," Ethan said. "Well, it's working," Mia admitted. Ethan frowned. "Don't let him get in your head. He's desperate. He wouldn't be playing these games if he wasn't." Mia looked out the window, her thoughts swirling. "I just wish I knew how this ends." Ethan didn't reply, but the determination in his eyes spoke volumes. Mia Torres paced the length of Ethan's office, her heels clicking against the polished floor. The energy in the room was tense, thick with uncertainty. On the sleek screen dominating one wall, a breaking news banner scrolled relentlessly. "Scandal at Voss Enterprises. Allegations surface against Ethan Voss." Ethan stood by the window, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the city below. The sunlight cast long shadows across his face, accentuating the weariness in his expression. "You knew this was coming," Mia said, breaking the silence. "I didn't expect it to come this soon," Ethan replied, his voice clipped. The allegations weren't new. They were old accusations of unethical practices, long since disproven but dragged back into the spotlight by Victor Lancaster. It was a calculated move, one designed to undermine Ethan's credibility and distract from their efforts to expose Victor's corruption. Mia stopped pacing, turning to face Ethan. "So, what's the plan? We can't just sit here and let him win." Ethan's jaw tightened. "We stay the course. The truth will come out." The truth, however, wasn't enough to stop the ripple effects. By the next morning, Ethan's inbox was flooded with messages from investors, many of them expressing concern or outright demanding explanations. One particularly scathing email made Ethan's stomach churn. "Ethan, I trusted you to lead with integrity. If these accusations have even a shred of truth, you can consider my support withdrawn." Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "You need to respond," Chloe said from the doorway, her tone gentle but firm. "And say what? That Victor is orchestrating a smear campaign. That won't inspire confidence. It'll make me look weak." Mia, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "What about me?" Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" "Let me speak for you," Mia said. "People see me as an outsider, someone who doesn't have anything to gain from this. If I vouch for you, it'll carry more weight." Ethan hesitated, the idea both appealing and risky. "You're already under enough scrutiny as it is." "I can handle it," Mia said firmly. "This isn't just about you anymore. If we don't fight back, Victor wins." The next day, Mia sat in front of a camera, her nerves barely hidden beneath a calm exterior. The press conference had been Ethan's idea, but the words she spoke were hers. "Ethan Voss is one of the most driven, principled people I've met," Mia began, her voice steady despite the cameras pointed at her. "I've seen firsthand how much he cares about doing what's right, even when it's not easy. These accusations are nothing more than a distraction, a ploy to keep us from exposing the truth." Ethan watched from the sidelines, his expression unreadable. As Mia spoke, he felt a mix of admiration and guilt. She was risking her reputation for his sake, and he couldn't help but wonder if he deserved it. When the conference ended, reporters bombarded Mia with questions, but she held her ground. Ethan approached her as soon as they were alone, his gratitude evident despite his usual stoicism. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "Yes, I did," Mia replied. "We're in this together, remember?" Later that evening, Ethan invited Mia to his penthouse to discuss their next steps. The space was immaculate, all clean lines and modern elegance, but it felt cold, devoid of warmth. "Nice place," Mia said, her tone laced with sarcasm. Ethan smirked. "Thanks." As they worked through their plan, the atmosphere gradually softened. Mia's sharp wit and Ethan's dry humor made for an unexpected balance, and for the first time in weeks, the weight of their situation felt slightly lighter. At one point, Mia glanced at a photo on a side table. Ethan, much younger, standing beside a man who looked remarkably like him. "Is that your dad?" she asked. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. He built the foundation of Voss Enterprises. I've spent my life trying to live up to his legacy." Mia studied him for a moment. "You've done more than that, but I think you're so busy chasing perfection that you forget to enjoy what you've built." Ethan looked away, her words hitting closer to home than he cared to admit. As the evening wore on, they drifted into more personal territory. Ethan spoke of the pressure he'd faced growing up his father's shadow, while Mia shared stories of her childhood, her struggles, and the people who shaped her into who she was. "It's funny," Mia said, swirling the wine in her glass. "I used to think people like you had it all figured out, but the more I get to know you, the more I realize we're all just trying to find our way." Ethan chuckled softly. "And here I thought baristas weren't supposed to be philosophers." Mia grinned. "We're full of surprises." For a brief moment, the world outside their bubble didn't exist. The tension, the scrutiny, the looming battle with Victor, it all faded into the background. But the moment couldn't last. As Ethan walked Mia to the door, his phone buzzed with an urgent message from Chloe. "Victor just leaked more documents," Ethan said, his voice tight. Mia sighed. So much for the quiet before the storm. Ethan Voss had never been one to lean on others. His success had been built on self-reliance, calculated risks, and a refusal to show weakness. But as he stared at the flurry of messages on his phone, investors demanding answers, Victor Lancaster's name trending for all the wrong reasons, he realized that this fight couldn't be won alone. Mia Torres sat across from him in his office, her expression as tired as his own. The two of them had spent the past week countering Victor's attacks and fielding relentless questions from the press. "We need more people on our side," Ethan said finally, breaking the silence. Mia arched an eyebrow. "People, as in allies. I thought you didn't trust anyone." Ethan smirked faintly. "Desperate times call for desperate measures." Mia leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "So, who do you have in mind?" Their first stop was a former colleague of Ethan's, a venture capitalist named Catherine Hale. Catherine had a reputation for being fiercely independent, a quality Ethan respected. But their last interaction had ended on a sour note, with Catherine accusing Ethan of prioritizing profits over principles. When they arrived at Catherine's sleek downtown office, Mia could feel Ethan's tension radiating off him. "Are you sure about this?" Mia asked as they stepped into the elevator. "No," Ethan admitted, "but it's worth a shot." Catherine greeted them in her glass-walled office, her sharp eyes immediately honing in on Ethan. "Voss," she said coolly, "to what do I owe the pleasure?" "I need your help," Ethan said, his tone direct. Catherine's eyebrows rose. "I didn't think help was in your vocabulary." "This isn't about me," Ethan said. "It's about exposing Victor Lancaster. He's not just undermining me. He's damaging the integrity of the entire industry." Catherine studied him for a long moment before her gaze shifted to Mia. "And you are?" "Mia Torres," she said, offering her hand. Barista turned accidental whistleblower, apparently. Catherine's lips quirked upward. "Interesting choice of partner, Ethan. She's proven to be more reliable than most," Ethan said, his voice steady. After an hour of tense negotiations, Catherine agreed to support their cause, but not without a parting shot. "Don't make me regret this, Voss." Their next stop was an influential journalist named Jordan Avery. Ethan had crossed paths with Jordan before, but their relationship was tenuous at best. Jordan was known for his investigative work, and Ethan hoped he could be convinced to turn his sights on Victor. "Why should I stick my neck out for you?" Jordan asked, leaning back in his chair as Ethan and Mia sat across from him in a bustling cafe. "Because Victor's corruption runs deeper than anyone realizes," Ethan said. "And exposing him would be the story of the year." Jordan glanced at Mia. "And you? What's your stake in this?" Mia hesitated, then said, "Victor's trying to ruin my life, too. But more than that, I think people deserve to know the truth." Jordan tapped his pen against his notebook, considering their words. Finally, he nodded. "I'll see what I can dig up." With Catherine and Jordan on their side, Ethan and Mia felt a renewed sense of purpose. But the fight was far from over. One evening, as Mia sifted through the growing pile of evidence in Ethan's office, she stumbled upon a series of emails that made her stomach churn. "Ethan," she said, holding up the printouts. "You need to see this." Ethan walked over, his brow furrowing as he read the emails. They were from Victor to several board members, discussing backdoor deals and questionable financial transactions. "This is it," Ethan said, his voice grim. "This is the proof. We need to take him down." But even as they celebrated the discovery, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. Their suspicions were confirmed when, the next day, Victor held a press conference of his own. "Recent accusations against me are nothing more than desperate attempts to deflect attention from Ethan Voss's own failings," Victor said, his tone polished and confident. "The truth is, Voss Enterprises has been in trouble for years, and Ethan is using this smear campaign as a distraction." Mia watched the broadcast in disbelief. "He's turning it all around on you." Ethan clenched his fists. "That's what he does. But this time, we're ready for him." The final push came during a high-stakes meeting with Voss Enterprises' board of directors. Victor had managed to secure a spot on the agenda, using the chaos he'd created to call Ethan's leadership into question. "This company deserves stability," Victor said, addressing the room with practiced ease. "And with all due respect, Ethan has failed to provide that." When it was Ethan's turn to speak, he stood with quiet confidence. "Victor talks about stability," Ethan began, "but what he's really after is control. He doesn't care about this company or its people, only his own agenda." Ethan then presented the emails Mia had found, laying out a damning case against Victor. The room buzzed with whispers as the evidence sank in. Victor tried to deflect, but the damage was done. The board voted unanimously to remove him from his position, marking a major victory for Ethan and Mia. As they left the boardroom, Mia let out a shaky breath. "I can't believe that worked." Ethan glanced at her, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "Believe it. We just took down Victor Lancaster." But even as they celebrated, both of them knew the fight wasn't over. The removal of Victor Lancaster from Voss Enterprises' board should have felt like the end of a long, grueling battle. Yet, Ethan Voss knew better. Victor wasn't the type to walk away quietly. "You look like you've been waiting for the other shoe to drop," Mia said as she stepped into Ethan's office, balancing 2 cups of coffee. Ethan offered a faint smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Victor's not done. He never is." "Then, what's the plan?" Mia asked, placing a cup on his desk. "We fortify what we've built so far," Ethan replied. "The board is behind me for now, but their support won't last if Victor stirs up more trouble." As if on cue, Chloe entered the office, her expression grim. "Sir, you need to see this." She handed Ethan a tablet, and Mia leaned over his shoulder to read. The headline hit like a punch to the gut. "Whistleblower or liability?" New questions emerge about Mia Torres's past. Mia's face went pale. "Well, what is this?" The article was full of insinuations about Mia's character, dredging up half-truths and out-of-context anecdotes from her life before the cafe. "It's a hit piece," Ethan said, his tone cold. "Victor's trying to discredit you." Mia spent the rest of the day fielding calls and messages from friends, co-workers, and even reporters. The cafe, once her sanctuary, felt like a trap as customers whispered and stared. Lisa, her co-worker, tried to console her. "People will forget about this in a week." Mia shook her head. "It's not just about me, Lisa. This is about Ethan, the company, everything we've been working for." Later that night, Mia sat in her small apartment, scrolling through the article again. The comments were brutal, filled with speculation and vitriol. She tossed her phone aside, burying her face in her hands. A knock at the door startled her. When she opened it, Ethan stood there, looking uncharacteristically unsure of himself. "I thought you might need this," he said, holding out a bottle of wine. Mia let out a dry laugh. "A little late for damage control, don't you think?" Ethan stepped inside, setting the bottle on the counter. "We'll fix this, Mia. I promise." The next morning, Mia walked into Ethan's office with a newfound determination. "If Victor wants to play dirty, then we fight back," she said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And how do you propose we do that?" "We take his game and flip it," Mia replied. "The more he digs into my past, the more desperate he looks. But if we focus on exposing his corruption, people will see the truth." Ethan leaned back in his chair, considering her words. "It's risky. So, is doing nothing?" Mia shot back. Ethan smirked. "Fair point." The two spent the next several days crafting a strategy. Ethan leveraged his network of allies, including Catherine Hale and Jordan Avery, to spread the narrative they wanted. Catherine worked behind the scenes to rally support from other industry leaders, while Jordan prepared a hard-hitting exposé on Victor's business dealings. Mia, meanwhile, took a more direct approach. She agreed to sit down for a televised interview, knowing the risk it entailed. "I need to face this head-on," she told Ethan when he voiced his concerns. "I'll be there," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. The interview was broadcast live, with millions tuning in. The interviewer didn't hold back, grilling Mia on everything from her connection to Ethan to the allegations Victor had planted. "Some would say you're out of your depth," the interviewer remarked at one point. "How do you respond to that?" Mia smiled, her voice calm and measured. I would say that everyone has something to offer, no matter where they come from. I didn't grow up in this world, but I've learned that honesty and determination matter more than status. Ethan watched from behind the cameras, his chest tightening with a mix of pride and guilt. He brought Mia into this mess, yet she was the one standing in front of the world, defending them both. The next day, the tide began to shift. Jordan's expose went live, detailing Victor's years of unethical practices and backdoor deals. Social media buzzed with outrage, and several of Victor's allies distanced themselves publicly. But the real turning point came when Catherine organized a press conference, gathering key figures from the industry to denounce Victor's actions. Ethan and Mia stood beside her, presenting a united front. "This isn't just about one man," Ethan said during his speech. "It's about accountability and the kind of world we want to build for everyone, not just the elite." The crowd erupted into applause, and for the first time in weeks, Ethan felt a glimmer of hope. Victor Lancaster was many things: ruthless, manipulative, and unrelenting. But for the first time, he was on the defensive. The media firestorm ignited by Jordan Avery's expose had unearthed years of corruption, and Ethan Voss was determined to use the momentum to finish the fight. In Ethan's office, a group of key allies gathered: Catherine Hale, Jordan Avery, Mia Torres, and Ethan himself. The room buzzed with energy as they prepared for the final phase of their plan. "The evidence we've collected is damning," Catherine said, tapping the folder on the table. "But Victor isn't going down without a fight. He'll try to discredit every piece of it. That's why we need to control the narrative," Jordan added. "The press conference tomorrow will set the tone. We can't leave any room for doubt." Mia, seated beside Ethan, glanced at the stack of documents. "And if he pushes back, what if he finds another way to spin this?" Ethan met her gaze. "Then we hit him harder." The press conference was held in a grand ballroom, packed with reporters and cameras. Ethan stood at the podium, his posture confident and his voice steady as he addressed the crowd. "For too long, Victor Lancaster has operated in the shadows, exploiting the system for personal gain," Ethan began. "Today, we bring those shadows into the light." He outlined the findings of their investigation, from falsified records to unethical business practices, each revelation punctuated by audible gasps from the audience. When Mia stepped up to speak, the room fell silent. "I never asked to be part of this world," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But once I saw the truth, I couldn't ignore it. This isn't just about one man. It's about holding power accountable, no matter how untouchable it seems." The applause that followed was thunderous, and Ethan felt a rare flicker of pride. But as the press conference concluded, a message from Chloe darkened his mood. Victor's legal team just filed a countersuit. He's claiming defamation and corporate sabotage. The countersuit was a calculated move, designed to drag Ethan and Mia into a legal quagmire. Victor's legal team flooded the courts with motions, tying up resources and creating a public spectacle. "It's a distraction," Ethan said during a late-night meeting with his legal counsel. "He's hoping to stall us until the media moves on." Mia leaned against the table, frustration evident on her face. "And what if it works? What if people stop paying attention?" Ethan's gaze softened. "They won't. Not if we keep fighting." In the weeks that followed, Ethan and Mia's resolve was tested like never before. The legal battles were grueling, each court appearance an exercise in endurance. Victor's lawyers attacked their credibility at every turn, painting Mia as an opportunist and Ethan as a desperate businessman clinging to relevance. One particularly harsh cross-examination left Mia shaken. She sat outside the courtroom, her head in her hands, as Ethan approached. "You did well," he said, sitting beside her. Mia let out a bitter laugh. "They made me sound like a fraud, like everything I've done was just to get ahead. They're grasping at straws," Ethan said. "The truth is on our side." Mia looked at him, her eyes filled with doubt. "Is it enough?" Ethan hesitated before replying. "It has to be." Amid the chaos, unexpected allies began to emerge. Employees who had worked under Victor came forward with their own stories, corroborating the evidence against him. Investors who had once sided with Victor publicly withdrew their support, citing ethical concerns. One evening, as Ethan and Mia reviewed the growing list of supporters, Mia couldn't help but smile. "It feels like we're finally turning the tide." Ethan nodded, though his expression remained serious. "We're not done yet. Victor's going to throw everything he has at us in the final stretch." Mia tilted her head, studying him. "How do you stay so calm through all of this?" Ethan smirked faintly. "Practice." Mia laughed, the sound breaking through the tension. For a moment, the weight of their fight seemed just a little lighter. The culmination of their efforts came during a high-stakes court hearing, where both sides presented their arguments. Victor's team relied on misdirection and character attacks, while Ethan's lawyers methodically dismantled their claims with hard evidence. Mia took the stand one last time, her testimony clear and unwavering. "When I met Ethan, I didn't trust him," she admitted. "I thought he was just another billionaire looking out for himself. But over time, I saw who he really is. Someone who believes in doing the right thing, even when it's hard. That's why I'm here. Because this fight isn't just about him or me. It's about everyone who deserves better." As she stepped down, Ethan caught her eye, offering a small nod of gratitude. When the verdict was finally announced, the courtroom erupted in a mix of cheers and stunned silence. The court rules in favor of Voss Enterprises. Victor's composure cracked for the first time, his face a mask of disbelief. The courtroom victory against Victor Lancaster marked the turning point Ethan and Mia had fought so hard to achieve. But as the adrenaline wore off, they were left with the daunting task of rebuilding, not just Voss Enterprises' reputation, but their own lives. Ethan sat in his office, staring at the skyline as sunlight spilled through the glass walls. His phone buzzed incessantly with congratulatory messages from board members and investors. Catherine Hale had already called twice, urging him to capitalize on the momentum. But Ethan's thoughts kept circling back to Mia. She had borne the brunt of Victor's attacks, her personal life dragged into the spotlight in ways she'd never anticipated. "You look like you haven't slept," Chloe said as she entered with a fresh stack of documents. Ethan smirked faintly. "That's because I haven't. You should call her," Chloe added. Ethan's brow furrowed. "Who?" Chloe raised an eyebrow. "Mia. She's been through hell, and you're the only reason she got dragged into this mess in the first place." Ethan sighed. "She probably doesn't want to hear from me right now." "Maybe," Chloe said, "but you won't know unless you try." Across town, Mia sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the stacks of unopened mail on her coffee table. She hadn't set foot in the cafe since the trial ended, too drained to face the curious stares and whispers. Her phone buzzed, and she hesitated before picking it up. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. She let it ring twice before answering. "What do you want, Ethan?" "To talk," he said. "Can I come by?" Mia hesitated. She was still angry. Angry at Victor, angry at the world, and if she were honest, a little angry at Ethan. But curiosity won out. "Fine," she said, "but don't expect a warm welcome." When Ethan arrived, Mia opened the door, arms crossed. "You're lucky I didn't slam the door in your face," she said. "I would have deserved it," Ethan admitted. She stepped aside, letting him in. The tension between them was palpable as Ethan took in the small, cluttered space. It was a stark contrast to his penthouse, but it felt more alive. "I wanted to say thank you," Ethan began, "for everything. You didn't have to stick by me, but you did." Mia leaned against the counter, her arms still folded. "You mean for getting dragged through the mud? Having my entire life turned into a headline?" Ethan's shoulders sagged. "I didn't handle it perfectly. I know that, but I never meant for any of this to hurt you." For a moment, Mia said nothing. Then, she let out a long sigh. "I know, and honestly, I wouldn't change what I did. But I need time, Ethan. Time to figure out what comes next." Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. "Take all the time you need." Mia returned to the cafe 2 weeks later, greeted by a mix of familiar faces and curious strangers. Lisa threw her arms around her the moment she walked in. "Thank God you're back," Lisa exclaimed. "I was starting to think you'd abandoned us." "I almost did," Mia admitted, laughing softly. The whispers from customers were inevitable, but Mia ignored them. The cafe felt like home again, a grounding force in the chaos of her recent life. Meanwhile, Ethan was making waves at Voss Enterprises. Inspired by Mia's insistence on authenticity, he announced a series of reforms aimed at increasing transparency and accountability within the company. The response was mixed. Some investors applauded his vision, while others balked at the risks. "Are you sure about this?" Catherine asked during a meeting. "You're going to face pushback." Ethan nodded. "I'm sure. It's time to do things differently." As weeks turned into months, Ethan and Mia's paths began to cross more frequently. Ethan would stop by the cafe occasionally, always ordering the same black coffee and engaging in brief, awkward conversations. "You're allowed to sit, you know," Mia said one day, sliding his coffee across the counter. Ethan smirked. "I didn't want to intrude." "You've already intruded enough," she teased, gesturing to an empty seat. To her surprise, Ethan took it. For the first time, their conversation felt easy, unburdened by the weight of their shared history. "I heard about the changes at Voss Enterprises," Mia said. "People are talking about it. Mostly good things." "Mostly?" Ethan asked, raising an eyebrow. Mia grinned. "You can't please everyone." One evening, Ethan invited Mia to a small dinner gathering with some of his allies, including Catherine and Jordan. Mia hesitated, but eventually agreed, curious to see how Ethan operated in a less formal setting. The dinner was held at a cozy restaurant, a departure from the lavish events Ethan usually attended. As the group discussed future collaborations and plans, Mia noticed how much Ethan had changed. He listened more, spoke with purpose, and seemed genuinely invested in building something meaningful. Afterward, as they walked to her car, Ethan turned to Mia. "You were right, you know? About what?" "Everything," he said, his voice soft. "About being real. About taking risks. I don't think I would have gotten here without you." Mia smiled, her cheeks warming. "I think you would have figured it out eventually." Ethan shook his head. "Maybe. But it wouldn't have been the same." Ethan Voss's office hummed with activity. The reforms he had implemented were beginning to reshape the corporate culture of Voss Enterprises, and though the changes were well received by some, others voiced their resistance. Ethan stood at the center of it all, directing meetings and reviewing policies with an air of unshakable focus. But today, something else occupied his thoughts. Sitting at his desk, he reread the email draft he'd written late last night. Subject: a new vision for Voss Enterprises. Body: dear partners, it's time we expanded our reach by creating meaningful partnerships with smaller businesses that embody authenticity and community values. He hesitated, his finger hovering over the send button. This proposal would mark a significant shift, one that could alienate some of his more traditional investors. But he knew it was the right move, and it was time to act. "Second thoughts?" Chloe asked, standing in the doorway. Ethan glanced up, startled. "Not second thoughts. Just considering the fallout." "You're making the right call," Chloe said firmly. "You've been playing it safe for too long. This is your chance to prove you're serious about the new direction." Ethan nodded, took a deep breath, and hit send. Meanwhile, Mia was finding her own rhythm again at the cafe. The media frenzy had died down, and while she still caught the occasional curious glance, she felt more at peace than she had in months. Her phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. "Can we meet? I have an idea I want to run by you." Curiosity piqued, she replied. "Sure. Your place or mine." Ethan opted for a neutral location, a small, privately owned coffee shop tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, a far cry from the sterile boardrooms they were used to. Mia arrived first, sipping a latte as she waited. When Ethan walked in, she couldn't help but notice how different he seemed. Less guarded, more present. "So," she said as he took a seat across from her, "what's this big idea?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I want to partner with businesses like this one. Small, community-focused, driven by values rather than just profits." Mia blinked, surprised. "That's not what I expected to hear from you." "It's a risk," Ethan admitted, "but it's a calculated one. If we can prove that authenticity and success aren't mutually exclusive, it could change everything. For the company and the industry. Mia leaned forward, intrigued. And you want me to help? I need your perspective, Ethan said. You see things differently than I do. And that's what makes this work. For a moment, Mia was silent, weighing the offer. Then she nodded. Okay, I'm in. The new initiative was announced at a company-wide meeting a week later. Ethan stood at the podium, flanked by Mia and Catherine Hale, who had become a staunch advocate for his vision. This isn't just a shift in strategy, Ethan said, addressing the crowd. It's a shift in values. Voss Enterprises will prioritize partnerships that reflect the principles of transparency, integrity, and community impact. The response was immediate and divided. Some employees and investors applauded the bold move, while others expressed skepticism. One senior executive pulled Ethan aside after the meeting. You're taking a huge gamble, he said. If this backfires, it could cost us everything. I'm aware of the risks, Ethan replied evenly. But I also know it's worth it. Mia's role in the initiative quickly expanded. She visited small businesses with Ethan, learning about their operations and building relationships with their owners. One visit in particular stood out, a struggling bakery run by a single mother named Elena. The bakery had been on the verge of closing, but Mia saw potential in its warm atmosphere and loyal customer base. This place has heart, Mia said as she and Ethan sat at a corner table, sampling pastries. Ethan nodded. Heart doesn't always translate to profits, though. It can if we do it right, Mia argued. Elena's story is exactly the kind of thing that will resonate with people. If we support her, we're not just helping her business. We're showing others what's possible. Ethan leaned back, studying her. You really believe in this, don't you? Mia met his gaze. Don't you? As the initiative gained traction, it became clear that not everyone was on board. A faction of investors began pushing back, questioning Ethan's leadership and threatening to withdraw their support. You knew this would happen, Catherine said during a late-night strategy session. I did, Ethan admitted. But I didn't expect it to escalate this quickly. The opposition reached its peak during an emergency board meeting. Ethan faced a barrage of criticism, with some members accusing him of prioritizing ideals over profitability. This company was built on hard numbers, not feel-good stories. One board member snapped. Ethan's jaw tightened. But before he could respond, Mia stood up. With all due respect, she said, her voice steady, this company wouldn't have survived the last few months without those feel-good stories. The world is changing, and if you want Voss Enterprises to stay relevant, you need to change with it. The room fell silent, and Ethan glanced at Mia, his respect for her growing even deeper. Ethan Voss stood in the Voss Enterprises boardroom, the tension so thick it felt like the walls themselves were straining to contain it. Around the table sat the company's most influential board members, their expressions a mix of skepticism and frustration. This initiative is bleeding us dry, one board member said, his voice cold and clipped. We've already lost several key investors, and if this continues, the damage will be irreversible. Ethan remained composed, his hands resting on the polished table. I understand your concerns, but this isn't just a short-term shift. It's a long-term strategy to align with changing markets and consumer expectations. Another board member leaned forward, her tone sharp. And if the market doesn't respond the way you hope, what then? Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, the door opened and Mia stepped in, uninvited but undeterred. Apologies for interrupting, she said, her tone steady, but I think you're underestimating what this shift means. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. Mia took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping across the room. I know I'm an outsider here. I don't have a background in business, and I'm not an investor. But I do know people, and what people want is to believe in the companies they support. They want to feel like their choices matter, that their money is going towards something meaningful. She turned to Ethan. When I first met Ethan, I didn't think he cared about anything but numbers. But I was wrong. He cares about making a difference, about leaving something behind that's bigger than himself. Ethan's jaw tightened, emotion flickering in his eyes. I've seen the impact this initiative has already had, Mia continued. The businesses we're partnering with aren't just surviving, they're thriving. And their stories are inspiring people far beyond what any marketing campaign could achieve. A murmur rippled through the room, and one of the more neutral board members finally spoke. "You've given us something to think about, Ms. Torres. But this is still a high-stakes gamble." "It is," Mia admitted. "But the best things always are." After the meeting, Ethan found Mia in the corridor, her posture relaxed but her expression contemplative. "You didn't have to do that," he said, stepping beside her. "Yes, I did," she replied. "They needed to hear it from someone who isn't you." Ethan smiled faintly. "Well, it worked. They're giving the initiative another 6 months." Mia nodded, though she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. "Good. Now maybe you can sleep for a change." Ethan chuckled softly. "Maybe." 6 months later, Voss Enterprises unveiled the results of its bold initiative. A sleek video presentation showcased the success stories of the small businesses they had partnered with. A bakery that had expanded to 2 new locations. A family-owned bookstore that had seen its sales triple. A local farm that had developed sustainable practices with Voss Enterprises' support. The initiative wasn't just a financial success, it was a cultural one. Public perception of the company had shifted dramatically, with headlines praising Ethan Voss for his forward-thinking leadership. At a celebratory gala held to mark the milestone, Ethan stood at the podium, his expression equal parts pride and humility. "This journey wasn't easy," he began, his voice steady. "There were moments when I questioned whether we were doing the right thing. But looking around this room, at the people whose lives have been changed, I know we made the right choice." He paused, his gaze finding Mia in the crowd. None of this would have been possible without the people who believed in this vision, even when it seemed impossible. The room erupted in applause, and Ethan stepped down, making his way to Mia. As the evening wound down, Ethan and Mia found themselves on the balcony, overlooking the glittering city lights. "You're the one who made this happen," Ethan said, his voice quiet but firm. Mia laughed softly. "I think you're giving me too much credit." "Not even close," Ethan replied. He hesitated for a moment, then added, "You've changed the way I see everything, the way I see myself." Mia turned to face him, her heart pounding. "Ethan, I don't want this to end here," he interrupted, his tone earnest. "You've become more than just a partner in this journey. You're the reason I've been able to take these risks, to see the world differently. I want you by my side, for all of it." Mia stared at him, her emotions a whirlwind. Finally, she smiled. "Ethan, you're a lot of things, but you're not easy. Are you sure you're ready for someone like me?" Ethan smiled back. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button to show your support. We'd love to know what part of a story had the most impact on you. Was it the unexpected twists, the powerful partnership, or the heartfelt moments? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you have ideas for stories you'd like to see next, let us know. Your suggestions help us bring the stories you love to life. Thanks for watching, and we can't wait to hear from you.